right. Thank you so much for joining me, Godless Granny. Kelly, how are you doing today?
I am fine. Thank you for having me.
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for joining me. So we're here to talk about objective and absolute morality. Little bit of backstory. You and I are part of a little group on Twitter. We both participated in a project with Atheist Edge. Shout out to Jim on Atheist Edge for that. And we're sharing ideas about different projects that we were all going to be involved in. And you made a comment about the distinction between objective and absolute morality, and it piqued my interest because I'm interested because I think that I'm going to be very amenable to that idea. I think that I'm going to agree highly with it, but I just wanted to hear how you might flesh it out so other people might be exposed to that for the first time. I don't think a lot of people even draw that distinction usually.
I would definitely agree with you there because one of the reasons that I even came up with this, well, I shouldn't say came up with this distinction because I didn't come up with it. But one of the reasons that I frequently draw it is because I so often see believers considering anonymous. And whenever I say I believe in I don't believe in absolute morality, they come up and say, "Aha! Therefore, you have no basis for your morality." I say, "No, I still have objectives to my morality. It's just not an absolute." And that's what I get. That, huh? What do you mean? And I don't have that much background in philosophy, so I'm sure there are some philosophers that will pick apart what I have to say and tell me that I've got some of the terminology wrong, and there are probably some areas that I haven't considered. But one of the things that led me to this position was reflecting on slavery.
Mhm.
Um, Somebody once asked me the question, "Has slavery always been wrong?" And I said, "Well, yes." Well, if slavery was always wrong, but people in ancient times did not understand this, was it still wrong then? And that's what made me really have to ponder and come to the conclusion that yeah, it has been because what is the goal? And that is what the way I define objective for objective morality is having a goal. And some people like to nitpick at that definition, but it is one of the definitions of objective, having a goal. And the goal of morality is to bring about the most well being to the most people. And clearly, slavery does not do that. But I do also recognize that there was a time when people didn't understand that. They genuinely did not understand that. And so, even though slavery was still morally wrong at that time, they didn't recognize that as being wrong. And so it was still objectively wrong at that time, but it was not an absolute. Um, I I don't believe in absolute morality because I think there is an exception to almost every rule that you could come up with. If there was no exception to that rule, then that would be the absolute. Um, and I don't think there are any absolutes. And so that's basically how I arrived at that position. Is that when we as a society look at things that bring about the most well-being for the most people, our ideas of what brings us to that objective evolves. Those things change as society changes. And so our morality evolves with our changing understanding of bring the most benefit to the most people.
Okay, so I'm just taking some notes on the things that you're saying so I can kind of hone in on my responses and give a well thought out response. Before I do that, I just want to say to anybody who might be listening, if there is anybody, that uh, my phone's not turned off. Welcome to Contentions. This is a open platform, not necessarily neutral, but open, hosting debates and discussions on contentious subjects. And I want you to feel welcome, no matter what walk of life you're from. If you have a question for me or Kelly today, tag me at Factitionalist Network. I do have at least one moderator in the chat who will collect those and send them to me. All I ask is that you, if you have a disagreement, be civil and attack the argument and not either of us or each other if you're in the, if there's more than one of you. And insults will not be read. Hate speech, anything that violates TOS will get you kicked or banned. That goes for general discourse with each other as well. Be respectful. My guest is linked in the description below. If you like what you're hearing, please check her out and hit the subscribe button so that I can be motivated to keep doing this. And with that, we'll go ahead and continue. So, objective morality. You said objective is defined as having a goal. That is one of the definitions. I did look that up before we started, and I do like that. In the military, we have objectives. We have phase lines, phase line alpha, phase line bravo, blah blah blah, and those are our objectives that we have to reach. And I like that definition of objective for that reason, because is it Kant who said the hypothetical help me out here.
That was way too long ago for me.
The
Undergrad was more than 40 years ago. I don't
imperative.
remember. Okay.
Hypothetical imperatives are yeah. There's categorical imperatives and there's hypothetical imperatives. And the hypothetical imperatives are the ones that are based on your hypothetical goals, and then there's categorical imperatives which are based on the category that you are, I suppose. And then, your hypothetical goals being whatever you hypothetically want at the time, right?
Mhm.
So the thing that gets to me is we are of a category, being human beings, and that should dictate some kind of categorical goal
Mhm.
in my logic, right?
Right.
But then
Mhm.
we encounter vegans, we encounter people who are trans humanists who want to. I'm a transhumanist, right? I want to evolve the human species beyond our biological confines and whatnot, right? AI would be something that I would advocate for their rights one day if they wanted it, So
Mhm.
like, there's a room in the moral landscape for more than just humans, right? So I refer
Mhm.
to agents. That's my moral category that I like to go to. How do you feel about that?
Um, Obviously, I do think that humans are not the only ones that have feelings and have and whose well-being needs to be taken into account. Um, and so, any being that has feelings, any being that is sentient, I think we need to give it some credence of and some consideration. How much depends on a lot of factors.
Right. Yeah. You're not a vegan, right? I'm not a vegan.
I am not a vegan. No, I love
Um,
cheese too much.
we are both pro-choice, right?
Hmm.
Um, there's an interesting intersection here when it comes to how we assign and conceptualize the moral worth of these different um, beings, for lack of a better term, right?
Hmm.
Um, so can you describe for me kind of the calculus that you are doing when you're thinking about these different things? And is there a comparison when you're, like, for instance, do you consider the vegan type thinking in
Uh,
relation to abortion? Do you consider the abortion type thinking in relation to veganism or any of these different things?
no, I don't. I had never really considered doing that. I usually consider each thing in its own compartment. Now, veganism, I do see a moral superiority to veganism. However, I also see some faults with veganism that defy the very objectives that are the groundwork of my morality. And that is that if the world suddenly went vegan right now, there are a lot of people that would starve to death because our food system is not currently set up to handle that. And so, even though I think there are things that could be morally superior by going vegan, if that is in fact our objective, we need to plot out a plan to get there that's not going to cause people to starve in the process. And so that's the whole reason that I would reject veganism, is it doesn't meet enough of the objective.
But as far as like the moral worth of an animal
Hmm.
or any other creature, did you consider um,
I do
how do you?
cons-
Yeah, go ahead.
I do
Sorry.
consider the moral worth of an animal to be inferior to the moral worth of a human being, and
Okay,
that is purely tribalism.
purely
I'm
tribalism.
sure that the lion considers me an inferior being to himself, and
Yeah,
I have no moral objection to the lion eating me. Um,
it's
but
purely pragmatic, right?
right.
Okay, yeah. See, that's a thing that a lot of people don't understand, or at least maybe not understand, but consider that there's pragmatic uh, arguments to be made other than moral things. Just because something is not necessarily a moral thing to argue doesn't mean that there isn't something else to consider. Just because it could be gross or
Hmm.
disgusting, uh,
Hmm.
infectious. There are other things to consider. Um, so, for instance, a fetus. Um, what is the I was introduced to this new concept in a YouTube comment section, moral patience or moral patiency. Have you ever heard of that one before?
No, I have not.
It's it distincts us into we are moral agents because we have the ability to make moral choices, right? And then
Hmm.
there are the things that are moral patients who are not able to make moral choices, like children,
Mm.
severely mentally handicapped, embryos, animals, anything like that. You know,
Hmm.
and I think that's a very interesting concept. And I just I'm trying to find literature on it, to try to read up on it, but I want to talk about that a little bit, just because how do you react to that idea? Do you think you like that idea? Do you want to engage with that?
That's fine. I'm you, sometimes my thought process is a bit slow, and so you might have to be patient with me as
Yeah.
I
Sorry.
consider
Yeah.
some of those possibilities.
So, an embryo as a moral patient, right? It's you have some kind of duty to it. Do you like that, or do you think no?
Okay. Um, I think there are very gray areas to the issue of abortion. I think there are some areas. I think there's very little, if anything, that we can say is a hard black and white when it comes to abortion.
Hmm.
Um, I cannot see any possible advantage to protecting a zygote. Most of the time the zygote hasn't even implanted in the womb. It is incapable of even developing into a human being unless some other things happen. When you get to the embryo stage, it is still incapable of being a human being. If you remove it from the uterus, it cannot survive. And so, for that reason, I don't think you can really say that it has a life of its own. Um, One thing that I find completely inconsistent in many pro lifers, not all, but many, is the idea that it's okay to kill an embryo if it's outside of a woman, but it's not okay to kill an embryo if it's inside of a woman. And that's the way most of the current abortion statutes are being written, that it is only illegal to kill an embryo if it is inside of a woman, which tells me that the objective there is not protecting the embryo, it's ruling the woman that it's inside of.
Hmm.
And I cannot see taking a test tube full of embryos and saying, this is human life in need of my protection. It has no feelings, it is not sentient. And so, no, I do not feel that an embryo is a patient in what
Yeah,
am I using the correct term?
I think so. I
Okay.
think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I don't think it has reached the point of being a sentient being yet.
Okay.
The problem for me is that there comes a point of viability when it is a sentient being. And exactly when that point is extremely difficult to tell. And for some, it never comes. And asking a woman to carry a fetus that cannot be viable, I do not think is a moral thing. And that is why I think that right up until delivery, you have to let this be a decision, a medical decision, not a legal decision, because there is nowhere where you can draw a legal line that will cover all medical cases. And I speak almost from experience here because I have carried a dead fetus for 3 weeks. And I can tell you that leaving my house with a dead fetus inside of me was extremely difficult because people have a very different attitude toward pregnant women. They feel like they can ask them very personal questions, and it's not obtrusive when it is.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
And now, in my case, the real issue was the danger that the medical community put me into. I never should have been forced to carry a dead fetus for that long. That fetus put my life in danger. But I do know of a couple of women who have carried live fetuses that they knew could not be viable. One woman gave birth and her baby lived for 3 hours and then it died. And she knew that would be the case even before it happened. So, yes, it's an abortion, and yes, it's killing a sentient being if she had aborted rather than given birth to that. But the emotional damage that that does to her, having to carry a baby for a month, knowing that that baby is not a viable human being.
Right.
And that to me is the whole problem with abortion is there is no way to regulate it
Right.
that will
Yeah.
fit every case.
Yeah. I'm so sorry to hear that. That's a horrible. I'm so sorry to hear that. My heart goes out to you, truly. Um, so it seems like when we are talking about things in the law, the legal realm, we're
Mhm.
creating this kind of absolute morality, right?
Exactly. Mhm.
And
Well, okay, now wait a minute. Law does that does not actually legislate morality, and that is one mistake that a lot of believers make. They think that we legislate morality, and we don't. We legislate our society to be a well-functioning society. Now, a lot of the things that make us well-functioning as a society also happen to be things that we have moral ideas about, like murder. We consider murder morally wrong. Well, murder is also disruptive to society, and so the whole purpose of legislation isn't to impose a morality. It's to have a regulated society.
right. So I guess to be more precise, then um, there's a distinction between um, the different systems that we create, the shoulds and should nots.
Hmm.
What is a system of shoulds and should nots is not necessarily a moral system, is what you're kind of saying, right? Maybe it's an ethical system, is a more precise way of putting it.
Okay, when you say that, are you saying that the purpose of the legislation is to make a more ethical system?
No, I'm just trying to accommodate what you're saying by saying that it's not a morality that we're legislating here. That it's an ethic.
Um, I'm not sure. Define ethic.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Because we use these words interchangeably, moral and ethic, so
Hmm.
often, and I feel
Exactly.
like when we're trying to figure out what we're talking about here, I think that there might be some utility in kind of maybe quasi permanently uh, distinguishing these two things and saying, like, the morality is the actual thing from which uh, goodness comes from, And then ethics are how we apply them in individual circumstances and contexts. Like in the law, we apply this idea of what goodness is to legal circumstances and get, legislation.
No, I would not agree with that.
Okay.
Because I don't think good is the objective of the law.
No?
Again, I think the objective of the law is a well-regulated society. Um, uh, uh, the set of laws, the intent of having a law is to bring the most benefit to the community. We put a stop sign there because it benefits the community and having people not drive through this intersection without stopping to check for traffic. There's nothing good or bad about stopping at that intersection. It's just simply this regulates our society better.
Hmm. Yeah, see, I think that is a good, right?
Okay, yeah, in the sense that it brings about the goal that we are seeking, then yes, it is good. It is good in that sense. But I don't think it's good in an ethical sense. It's it
Um, like for instance, the stop sign. It's there so that people can. Yeah, I get what you mean in the sense that a free flowing traffic lets everything go smoothly, right?
mhm,
But also in the sense that if people don't stop when they're supposed to, people will be killed,
right.
right?
Mhm.
So in
Mhm.
that sense is what I'm kind of focusing on, the good of preventing death
Mhm.
from people just barreling through traffic.
Mhm.
So yeah, I see your point, but I think that there's there is a it's an underlying kind of good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to hmm. I see your point though. Yeah, the legislation isn't necessarily in the business of creating morality, and often our laws are not necessarily about morality. Although my dad makes this point often, and I did challenge him to try to come up with a law that had absolutely nothing to do with morality, and I still haven't had a response from him. So
Oh,
I'm
that's
still
easy.
skeptical. Go ahead.
No parking in a loading zone.
No parking in a loading zone. Okay. Okay. I'll think about that one. That's a good one. Okay. No parking in a loading zone. Yeah. Yeah, you got me. Okay. You got me. There you go. Problem solved.
Yeah, usually when you want to separate morality from legislation, the easiest place to go is traffic laws.
Traffic laws. There you go. No parking in a loading zone. Okay. So what are we doing then when it comes to this intersection of law and morality and this absolute and objective thing here? Why are we so at each other's throats, would you say?
Well, between me and the believer, it's because the believer insists that they have an absolute morality and that their absolute morality is the only way to think and is the only way to live. And if you do not live by their morality, then you are offending an omnipotent being. You are in danger of hellfire, and you should not even be allowed to exist, according to some of them. Some of them tell you that you are worthy of death because you refuse to submit to their ideas of absolute morality.
Hmm.
And yet, when you challenge the believer on their absolute morality, it isn't even absolute. It changes.
Yeah. Uh, as an aside, have you ever encountered any secular absolute moralities?
No, I have not.
Okay. Okay. So we're talking about the absolute morality of God,
Mhm.
which they often will say is objective in some ways, but
Right.
that's not really objective because it's the subjective opinion of the omnipotent being that they worship.
Which changes from day to day depending on how that being is feeling.
Right. Yeah.
So absolute.
Yeah. It's difficult because you try, like for instance, slavery or even abortion. I mean, you look at the Bible. The Bible says that you have to the baby the breath three times. The first breath is the point where life starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Three different times. And then there's all different kinds of ordering the Bible, the God of the Bible ordering the death of unborn babies or actual born babies. So I mean, it's difficult to even understand where that idea comes from, really. But
My favorite go-to is the death of the firstborn children of Egypt,
oh yeah, yeah,
because there is absolutely no way to justify that, as God murdered innocent children to prove how great he was.
mm.
I don't see any way that anyone can say that that is a moral thing to do.
No, definitely not. It just boggles the mind the mental gymnastics that can go into that.
Hmm. And the answer I always get is, well, it's God. He's got the right to do whatever he wants to. And so God is the exception to absolute morality.
But I mean, even
Well,
that, like, I have the right to do anything I want with my
hmm,
body, but it doesn't make what I do moral. Like
hmm.
everybody has the right to go cheat on their spouse, but it doesn't make cheating moral. Rights do not determine morality. You know, it's ridiculous. But objective morality, though, we say as a it's a goal, right? And
Hmm.
so to me, I'm thinking the goal has to be something that everybody has in order for it to be something that applies to everyone. Would you agree with that?
Um, maybe. And the reason I say is, for me, the goal is well-being, which obviously I took from Sam Harris.
Hmm.
Um, and yes, everybody has some degree of well-being. Some of us have more of it than others. And obviously, there are some areas where if you go one direction, you're going to benefit more people than if you go another direction. And you do get into impossible dilemmas like the train dilemma, killing the one person or killing the five. Um, but do we all have something that we're protecting yeah, I think so. I think so. But it's something I had never thought about before. So
Okay.
I could see someone coming up with somewhere where I'm wrong there.
No, I don't think you're right. No, that's where I go. I go with perpetual survival because I think that all agents are working towards survival, either consciously or even subconsciously, is just a part of the physical, biological process of life, just trying to survive. Either, just in the fact that we eat, we seek to find shelter and mates and all those things. Um, and I'm not sure why. Like I really want to revisit that thought process as to why I kind of dismissed well-being. I think it was just too ill-defined for me. But
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah,
yeah.
I think there are some things in morality that will change as a result of increasing technology. For example, the abortion issue. I brought up to you um, that right now there is no way to make a law that will cover all medical cases. But right now, they are developing an external incubator that would be an external womb.
Hmm.
And if they ever finish developing this technology, which definitely will not be in my lifetime, it would be possible to take a developing fetus out of a woman and put it into this incubator and let it be incubated to full term. And that will completely change the definition of what constitutes a viable human being.
Right.
And I think we'll have to completely reassess what are the objectives at that point.
Okay. So I invite you to nerd out with me for a moment, if you would indulge, and just kind of speculate on what should we do once we're at that point. If you would be so kind. I'm sorry, but nobody ever
It's
wants to talk
okay.
about that with me.
It's okay.
And I have ideas. They're insane, and I'm a crazy sci-fi nerd. So,
I think at that point, pro-lifers will have to put their money where their mouth is,
mm,
because I think any woman that wants to have an abortion, it should be put out, okay, this woman wants to have an abortion. If anybody wants to adopt this baby, we will put this fetus into an incubator and incubate it for you, and you may have that baby. But unless somebody steps forward and wants to take this, then we will grant the woman her abortion.
and it would just be a termination of a.
Right?
Okay, interesting. No other. Okay, so I'm going to share with you my ridiculous ideas now. Please don't judge me too harshly. Um, but I have this idea of populating distant stars, the planets of distant stars, with the fetuses of of babies that were sent for abortion. It takes just so long for spaceships to get there, even at really close to light speed. It would just take too long for a human life. We would have to live generations on those ships. So it would just be easier to incubate fetus once it gets there. So just my idea.
The first thing that came to my mind was the old Catholic limbo.
Catholic limbo.
Yeah, the Catholics used to have several different forms of hell, one of which was limbo, which was the place where unbaptized babies went.
Oh my god.
It was not a place of eternal torment or punishment. They kind of just existed there for eternity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I fear, because if we were to decide that we couldn't terminate the fetuses, right? If that was the law that the majority ended up settling on, that we
Hmm.
had to preserve them in cryostasis or something like that, that would be
Hmm.
what we have, some kind of limbo for,
Hmm.
and then it would just keep growing and growing and growing. I don't know, like how we deal with that kind of situation.
Well, somebody's going to have to be on this ship to take care of it, and make sure everything is running smoothly, and you're actually going to need at least two people who are going to need to procreate and produce an offspring that will continue the mission of the ship after their life expires.
Yeah, that
um,
is possibly something that we need. So, as far as objective morality, is there any well-being? How do you define that?
that is difficult, because I don't have a solid definition. It's just that which brings the most health, happiness, um, life to the most people.
Right.
And the different things that go into well-being would also be prioritized. Obviously health is more important than happiness.
See, maybe it's not so ill-defined after all, right? I mean, health, for instance, freedom from invasive pathogens, right?
Mhm.
That's one criteria.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
what else? We could say being able to conscientiously choose when you want to pass away could be a
Mhm.
one thing,
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so like not being a fear of imminent death, you could say that. Um, there are these objective little there's that word objective, right? Little phase lines that you could come up with for different things that we could eliminate one at a time to actually establish what a global version of well-being could look like. And that's just one aspect, like you said, health, that we could look at. But I think that it's not really so nebulous. Just it can be well defined, and I think that it's not so contentious either. That who's going to argue with freedom from viral infection as a
Right.
as one specific objective point of well-being, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that's obvious. So I mean, objective morality, that's one thing that we should all be working towards, in my opinion. Freedom from viral infection. That's a moral thing. If somebody is working on that in any capacity, that they're doing something good. Now they could be doing unethical things in the pursuit of that,
Yes,
that
they
would
could. Hmm.
negate the morality of it, you know.
Hmm.
So that's how I would look at it, you know. And I, oh, what do you think of that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that that definitely sounds right because yeah, there's no question that some people have used bad motives and bad means to try to achieve um, a good result, and thus we get the saying, which some people attribute to the Bible, but it is not in the Bible. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, which
Hmm.
I don't actually believe, but it's sometimes true, but
Yeah,
I would not endorse that as a universal.
no, I agree. Um, okay, so I don't think we actually have any questions from anybody. Uh,
Okay.
I do have one. How about consensus morality? What do you think of that?
I don't agree with that. Um, Although in a way that's actually where we are. Um, if what he means by consensus morality is that we don't make any decision until we have a consensus, obviously we would never get anywhere.
So,
Um,
go ahead. Sorry.
if what he means is the majority rule, I mean that's actually what we have already. Because we do determine our morals by what most people think is right. For the most part, there's definitely some exceptions to that rule, and gun control is the what's the word I'm looking for? The big one. I mean, that's the granddaddy of them all. 90% of us in this country want some form of gun control, and yet our legislatures, which is supposed to be representing the ideas of the people that elected them, will not vote for it. And they won't vote for it because they're all beholden to the gun lobby. And um, so, even though there is nearly a consensus on the fact that we need gun control, we can't get there.
So I would say about it's interesting the idea of consensus morality. I wonder what they mean exactly by that. Like, does the
Right.
consensus determine the morality, or like
That's what I was wondering.
because I think that we need a consensus on morality to actually be a moral society. We all need to reach a consensus on the morality, but that's a separate question from what the morality actually is. So, like, go ahead.
I would agree with you, but I think we also need to recognize that there are times when the consensus is wrong.
Right, right,
And
exactly.
we reach a point where we realize that we made a mistake and we need to fix it.
Right, exactly. Like there's the question of what is the actually moral thing to do, and
Hmm.
then the hope is that we reach a consensus to that point. And if we don't, if we reach a consensus to somewhere else, then we've actually done an immoral thing as a
Right.
society, and that's
Right.
the problem, right?
Hmm.
And that's why objective morality is a real thing. For instance, the Nazis, right?
Right.
That's a society who reached a consensus on an immoral thing.
Right. Right.
And it could not be
They
the case if morality was not an objective thing.
yeah, they failed the objective.
Correct. Yeah. So let me just check again. I think that's it. I really do appreciate you joining me for this conversation, Kelly. I'm
No
sorry
problem.
that I don't have more things to argue with you about. I don't disagree with you too much. I'm sorry. I think you're right. I think you're a smart person.
Uh,
How dare I, right? No, but you're great. I love your channel.
I'll give you one that you might disagree with. I want to repeal the Second Amendment.
Oh yeah, I do disagree with that. I totally disagree with that. But we should have a different conversation then. So a little teaser. Let's just do that for like a couple of seconds. We'll just tease them for the next conversation about that. Um, I don't agree. I am fully for the Second Amendment, and it's about tyranny. Go ahead with your quick disagreement.
I think it is too misunderstood. And because it is too misunderstood, we have gone so far from the intent of the amendment that the amendment has essentially become obsolete. So we might as well get rid of it.
Do you want to do a real debate on it, like just you and me, atheist versus atheist, on like modern day debate or something?
That'd be fine.
Yeah, we should do that. Okay, like yeah, why not? Let's do it. Okay, look out for that, y'all. Okay, if anybody's actually watching, but I don't know.
I doubt very many people would agree with me, but that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah, I mean, why not? It's a good, healthy, friendly debate.
Hmm.
It'll be good. Okay. I really appreciate you joining me, Kelly. I'm going to go ahead and close it out now. But I just want to say to everybody that was watching, if anybody's watching, thank you to the moderators in the chat. Thank you to the audience, everybody, the person who said the question. And if you like the video, like it, share it if you want to spread it, and subscribe. Kelly is linked in the description below. Check her out, please. And have a great night. And remember, check out. I ain't got no. I still don't have a sign off. I'm still working on that. I keep forgetting. Okay.
I have one.
You have one? Go ahead.
Live your life.
Live your life. Have a great night, everybody. And I'm going to hit the outro now.